Hi, my name is Cole from FCP Aero, and today we're going to be installing the Super Pro sway bar on our Mk8 Golf R. In front of me is a Super Pro comprehensive sway bar upgrade kit for the Mk8 Golf R. This kit includes a 24mm rear sway bar, the sway bar bushings that are upgraded to polyurethane, metal sway bar end links, installation grease, and all the torque to yield hardware that we're going to need when replacing this sway bar. Now, why would we be replacing our sway bar? Well, if we hear some clunks in the rear end going over like speed bumps at slower speeds, that could be an indication that something in your rear suspension is worn. When taking a look at the rear sway bar, the common failure points are going to be the bushings that hold the bar on and the sway bar end links. From the factory, the sway bar end links are plastic, so we're going to be upgrading these to a metal unit that is going to make it last a lot longer, along with changing the rubber bushings out to a polyurethane bushing. So we're going to get a little bit more rigidity and some longevity out of it as well. Now, a thicker sway bar is nice because it's going to allow the vehicle to not have as much body roll and have more in-corner stability. And it does that by a stiffer bar that is connecting side to side so that bar can't flex as much. A rear sway bar is one of the easiest and most effective suspension upgrades you can do to your vehicle. Now that we've gone over everything on the table, let's go over the tools we're going to need for this DIY. On the table in front of us, we're going to need an arrangement of sockets, including a 5mm Allen, M10 triple square in different lengths, M6 triple square, 13mm, 10mm in two different lengths, and then 16 and 17mm shallow sockets. We're going to need a couple lengths of extensions, a Sharpie for marking our bolts. We're going to need a range of closed and open end wrenches, including a 13mm, 16mm, and 17mm. Pick or a mechanic screwdriver, flathead will work, and then a pry bar and a hammer is always good to have. We're going to need a couple different ratchets, including a 1/4 inch and a 3/8 from the sockets we used, some torque wrenches that range from 8 Nm all the way up to 55 Nm, and for speed of access, an electric ratchet is always handy. Now that we've gone over all the tools we need, let's get to installing this sway bar. Now that we have our vehicle safely up in the air, we're going to remove these aerodynamic shields on the lower control arms. We're going to take a 10mm and remove these two bolts. Now with those two 10mm removed, we can get a 90-degree pick underneath these two push pins. Once it's popped, we can remove that, and then we can also get the pick underneath of it to pull out the whole rest of the push pin, like so. Now with this side, we're going to move over to the other side and repeat that process. Now with those pins removed, we can tilt it up, over, pull a little bit on the top, and then we can slide this out. Now we can repeat those same steps with the airfoil on the other control arm. Now that we have this Aero shield off, we're going to be removing this 16mm nut using a boxed end ratcheting wrench, and we'll need a M6 triple squared socket with a little ratchet that will fit in between here to counter hold the center of the shaft. It's very tight in here, so you'll have a limited reach on this. Once we have this most of the way out, we can remove this and thread the rest off by hand. Now with this nut off, we can repeat the step on the other side. Now with the sway bar end link nut removed on the bar mounting, we're going to remove the 13mm nut and remove this bolt. Now that we have this bolt out, we're going to move to the other side and repeat the process. Now with all the hardware removed from the links, we can simply remove the link from the sway bar and put them aside. Now with all the sway bar end links removed, we can start removing the bracket. We're going to need a M10 socket that is long to clear the axle. I have an extension here because we're using a electric ratchet to remove it. Now the lower bolt, we're going to need a stubby M10 triple square. All of this hardware is one-time use, so we can put it to the side and throw it away. With one bracket done, now repeat the steps to the other bracket. Once all the bolts for the sway bar mounting brackets are removed, we can shimmy this sway bar out of the vehicle. So underneath here, we're noting that where our jack stand is positioned is limiting the movement of our sway bar. So we're gonna have to reposition our jack stand so we can then pull this sway bar out. Now with our jack stand repositioned, we can drop this down. All right. Now that we have our old sway bar removed, we're gonna go back to the bench and transfer the brackets off this onto our new sway bar. I have a good trusty old hammer here to knock off these old bushings. It's gonna take a little time, but be sure they will come off. Would you look at that? We got one off. Now we're gonna switch over. There we go. All right, with those brackets off, this can say goodbye. Now that we have the brackets that we're gonna need for the polyurethane bushings, we can take our installation grease here, tear it open, and start applying some grease inside of these polyurethane bushings. Get a good little dab just like that in there, and then we'll take our finger and apply it inside of all the crevices and seams in this bushing. Now, this bushing has some cross hatches on the inside to absorb some of that grease and keep it all in that bushing. Now, I'm just gonna do that to the other one and just use my finger here to work it in. It's okay to have some excess, it's just gonna squish out the sides. And then we can wipe it off when we're done. We're happy with that. So now that we have the grease on the bushing, it's good practice to grab a little bit more and rub it on the surface of the sway bar. There's never too much grease on the sway bar bushings. All right. Now with both the bushing and the bar greased, there is a split seam on this sway bar bushing and it looks just like that. Once you find that split seam, you can spread it and then slide it over the actual sway bar. You're gonna wanna be on the outside of this little collar here. That collar is designed to keep that sway bar centered. We'll repeat the step on the other side. And now with those bushings both on, we can slide the actual brackets over top of them. And they're engineered to fit right on there. Now with our sway bar all assembled, let's go back underneath the car and get this bad puppy installed. With our new sway bar, we're gonna start fishing this thing into its home. Now, we do have to remember it's a little bit bigger, so it might be a little bit more challenging, but we have poly bushings on our side that we can rotate, and I can already tell you it is much easier going in. All right, so we're gonna just lay this up here, make sure it doesn't fall. Now we're gonna go grab our hardware and thread it in. Now we can slide these bolts into the corresponding spots. And what's nice about these polyurethane bushings is that we do not have to torque these at ride height. So normally if you put a stock sway bar back in here, we would have to torque all of these bolts with the wheels sitting on the ground. And if you want to see how that's done, Rusty has a great DIY video showing you that whole procedure. But we're just going to take our hardware and thread them into the holes just to hold this up. Then once we have all the bolts in, we'll come back with our torque wrench and torque these to spec. Now with all these bolts threaded in, we can take our ratchet, or in this case, we're going to use an electric ratchet to speed things up and just get them snug. Now with all of our bolts snug, we're gonna come back with our torque wrench, torque them to 20 Newton meters and then an additional 90 degrees. Now with these marks made, we can take our socket and ratchet and just stretch this bolt. Now taking the end link with the bushing side down, we'll slide this in towards the bottom. We'll have to align this hole, and then once the hole is aligned, we'll take the new bolts that are provided in the kit, and from the back side, we'll fish it through this end link. There we go. Now with the bolt through one side, you'll see I need to shift it a little bit to get it all the way through here. And I use the pry bar to push that over to get all the threads aligned. Now with the threads sticking out, we can grab our nut that is included in the kit, thread it on here, and then torque it to spec. We'll take our 13mm socket again, just snug this up. Now with that snugged up, we're gonna torque these to 20 Newton meters and an additional 180 degrees. One note, if you're using genuine sway bar end links, those will have to be torqued down at ride height. Since these have a poly bushing in them and they're pre-greased, we don't need to do that, and we can torque them with up in the air. When performing this 180 degrees of rotation, be sure to counterhold the bolt on the other side. Now with our stretch done, we're gonna move to the other side and repeat the same steps. Now, if these sway bar end links are fighting you a little bit to get in, you can take a little bit of that installation grease and just grease these outer surfaces. And then you can take the grease and grease the inner surfaces just so there's less friction with this putting in. Now with torquing this nut to the end link, it is very tight tolerance here, so it's hard to get a torque wrench in here. Even a socket is quite challenging. So for this instance, we're just gonna take a 17mm box wrench and tighten this up by hand using our good old mechanical torque wrench arm. However, the torque spec for this nut is going to be 55 Newton meters. Now on the other side, we're going to slide this into our sway bar. It is quite a tight fit with it fully drooped. So we have our good friend, old Mr. Crowbar, to try to get this in. There we go. Take that nut, thread it on by hand. We have our 17mm ratcheting box wrench that we are going to use our torque wrench of an arm and torque this to 55 Newton meters. Since these ball joints are new and stiff, you may or may not have to counterhold the stud. And if you do have to counterhold it, you'll have to have a 5mm Allen that fits inside here. Now we have our Aero duct here, and they are size specific. You'll see there'll be an L and an R right in this section. This is the left side, so we're gonna throw this up here, make sure it fits over nicely, and you'll kind of feel it pop into place a little bit. We'll grab the push pins that we took out earlier and fit those into the top here. Sometimes it's useful to reach around from the front and the back to kind of position it. There we go. Once that base is in, you can then take the plastic pin part and insert it. And then just push down. Now with the one side done, we'll repeat that step on the other side of the plastic shield / Aero duct. Now with the plastic push pins in, we can take these 10mm bolts, thread them in by hand, use our ratchet to pull them all the way through, and then torque them to 8 Newton meters. Now let's go repeat this on the other side. Alrighty, we just finished wrapping up installing this sway bar from Super Pro on our Mk8 Golf R. If you've liked this video, be sure to hit that like button below. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please share them with us in the comment section. And we have a ton more DIYs coming out for the Mk8 Golf chassis and many more on our YouTube page, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. My name's Cole from FCP Euro. Thanks for watching and have a great day.